Hello and welcome to another edition of My Thriving Child Coffee Chats. It's Maggie, occupational therapist, and I'm here to give you an idea for this weekend or just sometime in the future to come of an activity that you can do with your child this weekend and how you can work in some different occupational therapy skills into that activity and how you can grade and adapt and tailor it to your child's interests and to where they're at with their skill level so that it can be a success for them. So, what we're going to talk about today, along with the spring theme. So, last week we did the Easter egg hunt. This week we're going to talk about how to use Easter egg designs and drawings to work on a lot of different skills. So, what we'll do first is we'll go through different sensory mediums, just different writing mediums that you can use for the activities, and then we'll go through some different visual perceptual skills that you can work on while doing this activity. And then we'll conclude with some ways to adapt utensils to help your child wherever they're at, whether they're working on the tripod, grasp, and need some adaptations to their writing utensil or anything like that. They need help with more control over it. So I'll go over some tips with that. So different sensory mediums, and this is by no means an exhaustive list of all of the different ways that you can draw. Okay, so this is just kind of giving you a starting point or maybe some inspiration that gives you other ideas, and maybe your kids have an idea too. So you can use construction paper to write on, but you can also use whatever medium you'd like. For instance, the first one that I wanted to give you guys was chalk. So if they're drawing Easter eggs, they can use chalk out on the sidewalk or on your driveway, that sort of thing. They can also use a smaller chalkboard or a vertical one on the wall. Anything like that could work. So again, they're just holding a different texture. It's a little bit of a different shape. You can kind of mix up that activity. Another medium that you can use is puff paint. So this is fun when they're done because then they're going to have that tactile sense. They can kind of feel over the Easter egg design since it'll be a little bit raised. And then also a lot of fine motor strength to squeeze and use that puff paint. So that's another good one to work on. Another one that adds in a little bit more of a sensory piece is using finger paint. So dipping their finger in and making the design that way can be something good to work on. So they just have to be okay with getting their hand in that paint. So let's see here. And then also just using a glue stick or glue bottle so that they can put different things on top of the glue. So it kind of provides that outline. So again, they're having to use a lot of that grip strength. If it's a glue bottle, using both hands together to open up a glue stick, and once they put that down, they can add sparkles, bead, yarn, tissue paper, you name it. It can probably work for it and be working on some skills. So those are just some different ways to create these pictures of Easter eggs. So that's just, again, a starting point. It's by no means an exhaustive list. Okay, so moving on to different visual perceptual skills that you can kind of facilitate during the activity. Now your child probably won't know this because it'll just be fun and it'll be part of the activity, but it will help them work on some different skills. So again, kind of going back to that writing progression. So kids start with tracing, and then they can move on to imitating. So they see you make the design and then they make it right after, and then copying. So they are copying from a model and they're not seeing it being made. So you can kind of use that progression to help you with these Easter egg pictures. So maybe, you draw the outline of the Easter egg picture with the pattern and, a circle and the pattern within it, and they have to trace over it with one of those writing mediums that I mentioned earlier. Or maybe you're doing it in front of them and they're imitating you right after on their own piece of paper. Or maybe you've created a model of a potential picture of an Easter egg, potentially what it could look like, and then they're making their own on another piece of paper. So that's working on that visual motor component. So being able to coordinate that visual information that they're taking in and having that motor output, which is their drawing. So that's, again, that progression that you can use with so many things, but in this case, we're talking about drawing pictures of Easter eggs. So within those Easter eggs, you can work on a lot of pre-writing strokes, which I plan on doing a YouTube video and podcast about just pre-writing strokes in general, because I think it's important. But easiest would be things more like vertical lines or horizontal lines in their patterns, and then progressing to angled lines and curved lines and shapes and things like that. So you can kind of tailor that pattern to where they're at. If they just want to scribble within the Easter egg and that's where they're at, they're just coloring in the lines, that's great too. And that's where you can kind of meet them where they're at with this activity. So that's kind of what you can do as far as patterns. And you can also work on visual memory. So this is a bit of a higher level skill to challenge them, but what you can do is you can show them a pattern and show them a picture of your Easter egg with a specific pattern. So maybe you have a blue angled line, and then a yellow horizontal line, and then a line of circles or something like that. Show them for 30 seconds or whatever you're going to designate as the amount of time, and then take it away and then see if they can recall that to then draw on their own piece of paper. So again, working on that visual memory piece is another good one to work on. And then you can make this a social activity by having them go back and forth with a sibling or friend. Like, hey, I'm gonna make a pattern. You look at it and then you try to remember it and replicate it on your piece of paper and vice versa. So it can be definitely a more social component too. So pattern replication and completion. So you can start a pattern. So say, it's a 3 pattern, or, so you've got, a horizontal line, angled line, and then a curved line, and that's your pattern. They're 3 separate colors. You start the pattern again and ask them to continue where you left off. So that would be that pattern completion component of things. And then again, pattern replication would be just them being able to copy off what you did onto theirs. So definitely some different ways that you can work on it. And then again, like I was saying earlier, work on fine motor control and being able to color within the lines. It's a great way to work on that skill. So give them guidelines and then have them color within those lines. And then if they're working on just, holding that pencil and making marks, have them try to do that within just the oval for the egg. Anything like that is great. Okay, so then again, let's go down to adapting utensils. So if they are wanting to use paint, what you can do is you can use a Q-tip instead. So they dip a Q-tip into the paint, and that really works on more of that fine motor control, because what happens is a lot of kids tend to hold a utensil at the distal, at the far end, and try to manipulate it, and they lose a lot of control. So when it's shorter, they're able to hold it near the end. So that's where that Q-tip really helps to have more of that proximal, that close grip, and more control. Same concept goes for breaking crayons in half, or colored pencils in half, or using like a pipsqueak, like a shorter marker. It's shorter, so they're going to have more control over it. So those are ways to grade a lot of those different ways of making their Easter egg pictures. So lots of work with patterns and visual motor concepts and things like that within this activity. So again, it's just kind of a fun spring activity. And that concludes another My Thriving Child coffee chat. Again, this is every Friday. I try to keep it 10 minutes or less and just give you a fun activity to do for the weekend and future to come that works on a lot of different developmental skills for your child. So I will see you next week, same time, same place. Thank you.